It's time for the most important game picks you will make all year. Ohio State facing Michigan in the 2024 edition of the game. Ohio State is a 20.5-point favorite with an over-under of 51 heading into Saturday. Happy Thanksgiving. And now it's time, after you've had this time of thankfulness and love and family, it's time to hate. It's time to hate. Stefan, what's your game score?
Yeah, I've got Ohio State winning this game 35-7. As I mentioned, throughout this podcast, from an X's and O perspective, this isn't really much of a level playing field. I think Ohio State is just the more complete roster, more dominant roster. I think they have a quarterback who can throw the ball forward. I think that's definitely a huge help. They got an offense that can move. I think Michigan's got a decent defense, and they could do some things to slow down Ohio State. But no matter how much they contain Ohio State, it's not going to be enough for Michigan's offense to help them keep this game close. I think this Ohio State defense is really going to put an exclamation point on what's been a really strong second half of the season. And I'm really excited to see, the way this unit performs going into the Big Ten title game where, you finally get that rematch with Oregon, kind of the first unit to really expose them a bit this season. So Ohio State 35-7. I think that's right under the over-underline. So we'll see how that goes. Ryan Day gave us a late over against Indiana, but we'll see how it goes against Michigan here. But I don't think it's much of a level playing field once you get into the X's and O's of this game.
Andrew, game score.
Ohio State 36, Michigan 10. I think Michigan is going to show up to Columbus with something. I don't know quite what, but it's going to be something that they've schemed up to try and score some points. I said it on the pod earlier in the pod where it was like, you know what? Hey, Michigan, I think their game plan just needs to be how do we get to 20? And if we get to 20, we give ourselves a fighting chance. So I think Michigan is going to maybe reach that kind of level. I don't think we're in for shutout or anything like that. Just because I think rivalry games can get weird. Michigan's kind of, they're going to be ready to go and they're going to have something up their sleeve. Ohio State's just way better. And I think that, some of the quote unquote magic from Michigan these last couple of years is gone. I don't trust that offensive line to run the ball for Michigan. The running game is just not what it was. The secondary is not what it was. Will Johnson's not going to play. You map it out and they don't match up on paper to Ohio State. Ohio State's better on offense. They're better on defense. I think they're better coached. I think in all kind of phases of this game, Ohio State's better. The reason I went with 36 is because I think Ohio State is going to try to twist the knife a little bit. I think Ohio State at one point is going to try a 2-point conversion or something like along those lines of fake extra point. They're just going to outright go for 2, whatever. I'm not saying Ryan Day is going to do though because we couldn't go for 3, but I do think that Ohio State is going to try to empty the playbook. They are not going to hold anything back. They very much remember what these last 3 years have been like. Ryan Day's talked about this with us, this week. He's talked about this in TV interviews, how much this has meant to him and his family. These players have not beaten Michigan in their, careers. Nobody on the roster has beaten Michigan. The 2021 recruiting class, all of which, all these guys came back. This is it. And I just think that this is kind of the right time where Ohio State's really up. Probably the best team in the last 4 years, more talented team, at least of the last 4 years. Michigan, probably the least talented team they've had in the last 4 years. I just look at this game and I see Ohio State rolling pretty easily. And I think it's going to get out of hand, and I think Ohio State's going to break the streak.
You said the magic of the last 3 years at Michigan is gone. By any chance, is that magic currently employed at Belleville High School helping coach a 5-star quarterback by any chance?
I think part of the magic is there. I wouldn't say all of it. Michigan did have really good players in these last couple of years. Can't ignore that. They did have very, very good football players, and they did win a national championship. But I don't think you're off base.
Magic. Ooh. I'm just wondering, sometimes you got to make a wish, and sometimes the fairy Connor Stallions grant your wish. 35-13 is my score. I thought about shutout. In fact, after I watched Texas walk up and down the field on Michigan and Quinn Ewers just kind of flirt with, hey, I bet you can't pick me off for 60 minutes, and win that game 31-12. I think I might have put out there on social media somewhere, Ohio State might shut out Michigan or something like that, or it's going to be a long day on November 30th or something like that. I thought about shutout because Michigan's offense is that bad and Ohio State's defense is that good. But I went 35-13, and I gave them 7 points just strictly based off of what we've seen from Ohio State post-Oregon game, which is that first drive when you're on your script, you can move the ball a little bit. And it's nothing against Ohio State. It's just they have good players too. Their players get paid too. They're on scholarship too. And so maybe Michigan gets something moving on that first drive. But then what happens is, whether it was the Nebraska game, the Penn State game, Purdue, LOL, Northwestern, even last week against Indiana, what happens is you move the ball on that first drive, Jim Knowles figures you out, and then you don't move the ball no more. And that's what I'm expecting, and so that's why I gave him a touchdown. And then I gave him a couple of field goals just in case Sharon Moore has some trickiness up his sleeve that he can tap into to where he gets a random 30-yard play because they did something weird and now they can kick a field goal because of that. That's why I gave him 13 points. I gave Ohio State 35 points, and I wanted to give them more. I really, really wanted to give them more. I'm taking the under because it's going to be cold. It's going to be in the 20s when this game starts and get up to the 30s. Now, this isn't the South, so they don't just completely forget how to play football when it gets a little cold, but it can impact some things in how you go about doing certain things. Ohio State does want to control the clock anyway. Maybe the weather plays a role in that as well. But also, I do think as much as the emotions that might spill out from this game when you've got this much pent up over 3 years, and I think, Andrew, you're right. They're going to stick it to Michigan a little bit, but it's not going to be hanging 100. I don't think it's going to be that. And the main reason for that is because you got to balance sticking it to some dudes you hate who created even more reasons for you to hate them over the past 3 years with also there's actually a lot on the line a week from now. And so how do you balance both of those things? That's how I ended up 35-13 in a win that, quite frankly, could be 55-13 if we were living in a different era of college football where these weren't these new clock rules. And also Ohio State wasn't having to play a rematch against the number one team in the country 7 days later on a neutral site while also signing day. But this is going to be a fun environment, right? There's going to be plenty of recruits in town, 5-star commits, 5-star targets across multitudes of classes. Maybe some celebrities show up. I mean, I know back in 2016, LeBron James showed up. He's not showing up this time around. He lives in Los Angeles. He doesn't live in Cleveland. But you don't know. Maybe some alumni show up. You don't know who's going to show up. But Ohio State is putting a lot into this Saturday, both on and off the field. And I think they're going to try to put on a show and also exercise some demons. So all of us around essentially 35-10 is essentially where all of us are around, where we're giving some credit to maybe Michigan does some stuff to score. But the point of the matter is all of us have Ohio State covering. 2 of us have an under. 1 of us has an over. But none of us think that this is going to be remotely close whatsoever. Those are our game scores. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik. That's Andrew Gillis. If you're watching on our beautiful faces on YouTube, hi, Mom. Go listen to an entire podcast. Go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts and get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. It's the game, baby. Last game of the regular season. Ohio State with a chance to punch its ticket to the Big Ten championship game. Michigan with a chance to play spoiler in that. For Andrew Gillis, for Stefan Krajisnik, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.